And welcome back to another episode of the On the Sideline podcast with Jackson and Kyle. I am Jackson, and I'm joined here, as always, by the man who will have nothing but nice things to say about the New York Giants. Kyle, how are you doing?
Doing pretty good. Just ranting about grocery prices today, that's all, Same thing as everybody else.
Okay. What's gotten you down about grocery prices, Kyle?
It's crazy how expensive it is. Like, I can almost go to Panera Bread every day and spend less than on groceries. How wild is that? Look at this age we're in. It's insane.
I feel like, for whatever reason, I don't know if it's just me. I feel like I feel like it's been okay recently for me.
I think everything's just slowly gone up a little bit. I mean, I don't know. I feel like I pay way too much, but who knows?
Okay. Well, before everyone clicks off because we're talking about grocery prices, this is, an interesting show, more of an open format type show today because we only, it's not a long concept. In fact, I feel like we've done this in the past where this has only been like a third of the show or something like that. But I thought it could be interesting. What we're going to do today is there were 14 teams that made the playoffs last year. We're simply going to talk about which teams, we're going to rank in order, which teams are most likely to miss the playoffs this next year.
Yeah, let's go ahead and get into it. I mean, obviously we had our, we done all of our questions. We've done all of our off-season final stuff for each of these teams. Now let's get into who succeeded last year and who's not going to succeed this year. There's a lot of candidates. I will say there's a lot of candidates to not make the playoffs again next season.
Yeah, we have an interesting spam chat in the chat below. I will have to delete that, but interesting stuff there. But yeah, no. So I was trying to think about how I wanted, because like the thing about this is you look at all the playoff teams, and everyone assumes you're going to see the same teams in the playoff again, right? Like it's just, I feel like we typically think, okay, 90% of these teams are still going to be there next year. It's not usually how it works. Usually you have like a handful that make it, and then almost like half of them are new. So that's why I thought this could be a very fascinating discussion. Here's how I'm trying to think of how I want to do this. And I want to let's do it this draft style. We probably should have said this before we started the show. But what if we do this draft style, but we start with the teams that we think are most likely to make the playoffs?
Teams most likely to make the playoffs. Okay. Yeah, that works for me then.
Okay, cool. So do you want to go first, or would you like me to go first?
I'll go first. Why not? I'll take the Kansas City Chiefs. They have Patrick Mahomes. And as long as Patrick Mahomes stays healthy, I don't see very many reasons to why they will not make the playoffs next year. They were fourth in point differential last year, but they have the MVP of the league and probably the undisputed best quarterback in the league right now. So it's hard to pick anybody else but Kansas City because of that. You have that great framework. You have that offense. I don't think that offense is going to slow down much at all this season. Defense is still, seems like year to year it can be hit or miss, but they're going to score a lot of points. And so Kansas City slots in at number one.
Yeah, I feel like this is the consensus number one, also number one on my board. But here's where I think here's my thought of like, how could they miss the playoffs? For one thing, they play in the AFC, and I do think that kind of factored in a little bit to my rankings of like, what conference did you play in? Just because, I do think the AFC is going to be tougher to make the playoffs than it is going to be in the NFC this year. I also felt like, what if we have a Patrick Mahomes injury? Could that potentially be what keeps, and you can say that about every team, for sure, but could the Chiefs Mahomes is so valuable to that team, could that be the way that they miss the playoffs in 2023?
Yeah, I mean, to an extent, like I still just have a hard time seeing this team being a bottom set, outside the top seven. But yeah, I mean, I think you could probably name 4 or 5 teams here that if they lost their starting quarterback, they wouldn't make the playoffs. And Kansas City definitely checks that box. However, we've seen them win games without Patrick Mahomes,
right?
Especially they've won playoff games without Patrick Mahomes. I'm not expecting that sort of production from Blaine Gabbert if he has to step in here, but they have the infrastructure with a good offense. They still have good playmakers, great coaching staff, and all that. I have a hard time seeing them not being a top 7 team in the AFC. I know the AFC is harder. I know it's going to get more and more difficult each year, it seems like right now, because there's just so many talented young quarterbacks. But I think overall, it's just I have a hard time seeing this team missing out and not be one of the top 7. It'd have to be a significant injury to Mahomes, and I just don't know if that's going to happen.
Well, let's play it out because again, crazier things have happened, right? This will be certainly up there with the surprising nature. What's the way that they could miss the playoffs with a healthy Mahomes? I'm trying to think of it, and I think here's the narrative. Again, just playing it out, covering our bases here. If the tackle situation ends up being kind of a mess, which is possible with Donovan Smith and Jawan Taylor, that's possible. And then you also have, maybe some of these young secondary players take a step back in year 2, which is also a reasonable thing. And then maybe they win like 10 games, but that still doesn't get them in. Like that would be if it doesn't work out, feels like that's the way it could fail, right?
That, and not only that, we would have to see some significant improvement from Denver, right? Like if Las Vegas
or the Chargers.
and Denver, yeah. Well, I mean, I think the Chargers have a chance to be pretty good. We'll see. But and they won 10 games too. So, I mean, if the Chargers, win 10, 11 games, and if Denver all of a sudden rights the ship under Sean Payton, then yeah, I mean, we could see the 2002 Patriots are an example where they went 9-7 and missed the playoffs because I think they finished 3rd or 4th in that division one that year, right after winning the Super Bowl. So that's probably the scenario, but Denver would have to get a lot better to make that division more competitive and hurt their division record too, because that's 6 games where they went 6-0 last year. And if I were to pick right now, I'd probably pick them to go at least 5-1 next year.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I feel like they don't randomly. Division games are just fluky in general. Division games can be weird. Like what the Raiders kind of had their number for a bit. Like I feel like the Broncos have played them tough, even though the Chiefs always end up winning. You never know with divisional games.
To an extent, yeah. I mean, the Chargers played them well twice last year, but it always seems like Kansas City's winning these games.
Yeah, that's the other aspect is it's the Chiefs. They're going to make the playoffs next year. Let's move on. Number 13 on the list. I'm going to go to Eagles. I think the Eagles, the other Super Bowl, contender, which is maybe a bit of a warmer take just because they did lose some pieces, right? It's not crazy to think that maybe if a couple of these older veteran defenders take a step back, that they could be in trouble. I think that even if that happens, even the doomsday scenario of the lack of linebackers now really hurts them. Darius Slay and James Bradbury both take steps back next year. They're still going to have a really good defensive line, so it's not going to be a completely atrocious defense. And I think their offense will still be good enough to get them into the postseason in this year. So just given what they have. So I think that they're still a team that even their doomsday scenario, I guess the only real way I could see them is, the quarterback thing. If Jalen Hurts turns out maybe last year was a mirage, that would be it. But again, I don't think that's going to happen.
I don't think it is either. I guess the one thing is when we talk about these two teams, because these are the pretty obvious top 2 picks. They both made the Super Bowl last year. They were kind of the undisputed best teams wire to wire last year too, which was another part. But I think, who is more likely to catch their, the Eagles or Chiefs, the Chargers or Broncos or the Cowboys?
Well, but I think that the way I view it is the Eagles would still get in as a wild card, even if the Cowboys, caught them. Because it's not just winning the division; it's making the playoffs.
Right, that's what I'm saying. I mean, I agree with that. I think they would make the playoffs just because the NFC is so weak. But at the same time, part of these teams missing the playoffs is they have to lose their division.
Right.
And I guess, you could see this in Cowboys, won 12 games last year. Point differential, they were pretty close to the Eagles last year. They also showed that they could win without their starting quarterback. I mean, the Cooper Rush story is pretty well documented that he went 4-1 as the starting quarterback, basically. So they could definitely take the division, and maybe if the Eagles slip a little more, they slip out of the playoffs. But it's hard to see them in the NFC, given the state of the NFC, slipping out of the top 7.
Yeah, that's maybe the one argument that is actually interesting, or not the one argument you said that's interesting, but I think the most interesting thing you said was the injury thing, because it didn't look great when Hurts wasn't out there in the Gardner Minshew couple of games. It was kind of a mess, and they went out and they got Marcus Mariota, who I think they feel like could at least be a good quality backup, because Hurts does have a play style where he takes hits, and maybe that's the way that the Eagles could miss the playoffs is if a Jalen Hurts injury, which again, can be said for all of these, but that is, I think, maybe one of your concerns heading into the the season, that you feel pretty confident if you're an Eagles fan, you're going to make the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of our arguments could be, well, the quarterback gets hurt and that changes
Right.
everything, right? I mean, it could easily be that way. So, I mean, that's fair, but at the same time, and that's probably the easy argument, but at the same time, we've talked before about how backup quarterback is now an extremely important position.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, do you feel more confident about Mariota compared to who did they have last year? Minshew? Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Minshew. So I mean, Mariota runs a similar play style, so I guess that makes a little more sense fit wise. But it would be interesting to see what happens because yeah, I mean we've seen teams crumble without starting quarterbacks, and like I said, we've seen other teams, manage to weather the storm, and that saved Dallas's season last year, for example, was that they were able to kind of weather the storm with Cooper Rush in there.
Yeah, I think I agree. Let's go to number 12. Why don't we? Where are you going here?
All right, racking my brain. Like you said, kind of moneyball this just because I think the NFC is weaker than the AFC. So the quarterback situation's weird. I get it, but they're the number one team in point differential, anyways. So I'm going to take the San Francisco 49ers. I have faith Kyle Shanahan is going to win I'm almost said Kyle Anderson. I have faith Kyle Shanahan is going to find a way to win at least regular season games and a lot of them. So they went 10-2 in conference last year, 6-0 in the division, and I think that division's actually weaker at the bottom of it this year too. 8-1 at home, like all the numbers point to San Francisco being awesome again. They do have some changes they have to deal with. Some guys in the secondary gone. Defensive coordinator D'Amico Ryan's gone. Those are some tough things. They have some injury bug guys like would you be shocked if George Kittle's hurt next year? No, he's kind of had that happen before. Trent Williams is another one. Getting older year by year. So there's a few guys there, but overall, this San Francisco team's a machine. And I feel pretty confident they're going to win 11, 12 games.
Yeah, it's a good pick. It was next on my list as well. Again, the NFC thing. I do think that if it was just in a vacuum, I think I'd probably have a team in a better spot than the 49ers. But I think one thing, you talk about the quarterback situation being weird. In a weird way, that almost makes me feel better about picking them because, like, I feel like they're less, we talk about with every one of these teams, they're an quarterback injury away. Well, the 49ers are like 3 quarterback injuries away, which still could happen, though, because it's the 49ers.
Yeah. I'm fascinated to see how this is this the number one, positional controversy of the offseason? Because it is for me, no doubt.
I think so. Yeah, I mean, quarterback is already going to be such an interesting. If I don't know, there's some people talking about the Baker Mayfield versus Kyle Trask quarterback controversy. Like quarterback controversies in general are just inherently fascinating, and that's 2 bad quarterbacks on a bad team. These are 2 potential good quarterbacks. I guess 3 if you count Sam Darnold on a team that's trying to compete for a Super Bowl. Yeah, fair enough. So, but still, they even have Sam Darnold in there, who's obviously going to be quarterback 3. Although, wasn't there that report that maybe Sam Darnold was quarterback 2 and Trey Lance was 3? I don't know what to believe with reports; those things aren't true. But still, interesting stuff there with the quarterback stuff.
Yeah, I mean, you have Trey Lance, who drafted 3rd overall. Obviously, we felt like he was a bit of a project at the time. Brock Purdy ran the table last year. That's a fascinating battle. This is 2 young guys who, are just starting their careers, really hoping that they can turn this around. And San Francisco has both of them, where it felt like, it felt like they had no quarterback for so long, and now that feels like they have 2 pretty interesting options. I'm not out on Trey Lance yet. I still believe I still have some Trey Lance stock in my portfolio. I think he's got some talent. I think he's shown some flashes. Obviously, it's very small flashes because it's a very small sample size. But I still think there's something there that could be interesting. So I'm curious to see how this plays out. But regardless, this is all about the San Francisco 49ers roster as a whole and what they've done. I mean, because even if Kittle gets hurt at this point, yeah, that's a possibility. Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, and Christian McCaffrey is still a really good offensive trio.
Yeah.
And even if McCaffrey gets hurt, Kittle, Samuel, Ayuk with Elijah Mitchell is a really good offensive, diversity to have there. I mean, it's just incredible what they have from this group. And all these guys they could throw out there. It seems too stacked to fail right now. Not to mention they added one of the best defensive tackles in football to one of the best defensive lines in football. So I'm pretty high on San Francisco again.
Yeah, I have some offensive line concerns with the Niners, which it seems like you shouldn't ever be able to say for an offensive line that has Trent Williams. But like, I do feel like outside of that, I think that's maybe an underrated thing that people aren't really talking about is that they've been losing like an offensive lineman every year. It feels like that could be. I'm concerned. Again, we trust Shanahan to figure it out, but I'm a little concerned about that.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I guess the one thing is like this isn't really an offense that requires the quarterback to hold the ball. So, as long as they just make quick decisions, it should be fine. But it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Let's move on. Why don't we? Number 11. So I'm gonna go. I believe we now have given the what is this the 2 seed last year? I can't remember. I believe so. I'm gonna go to Buffalo Bills as my next choice. Again, you could talk about some potential issues with the Buffalo Bills, but I still just feel like this is a team that I don't know. The criticism for the Bills has always been they don't perform well in the big game, or not always, but it's become they can't get over the hump. They're a good team, but they can't beat these other great teams like the Chiefs and the Bengals when it comes to the postseason. That might be true, but at the end of the day, I still feel like I'm going to trust this Buffalo Bills roster, which, again, I don't think is an elite loaded roster from top to bottom. I think there's some holes in it, but Josh Allen means so much to this team. I still think there's enough talent outside of this. Definitely a team that if I don't know if Josh Allen's hurt and we have to deal with Kyle Allen here, the season's over. We're over and done with. But assuming that you get a healthy Josh Allen, I think this team is still a lock to make the playoffs next year.
Interesting. I had them 6th.
Oh, as in 6th highest or 6th? Because we kind of doing it like
6th most likely to make the playoffs again.
Okay,
so just a couple more spots down.
Gotcha.
Let me. I guess I'll go on a few tangents here. Number one, I think of the teams we've just listed, and maybe a couple teams below. They've addressed backup quarterback worse than anybody.
Right.
I'm not a Kyle Allen believer. I don't think that's going to work if he has to step in and play games. I think that's a bit of a concern. Number two, I believe that Josh Allen takes on more singular burden for a football team than any other quarterback in football.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think that, he has Diggs, which is a, really good weapon. He's a great receiver, but at the same time, the option, I know that they got a few guys, but at the same time, I'm not really trusting any of those guys are going to step up as a number 2 in year 1. Knox is an okay tight end. I like Kincaid, but I think it might take a year. We'll see if Gabe Davis can, kind of do things. I mean, Josh Allen is the bulk of their running game, it seems like at times too. I think he takes on a huge offensive burden for that team. And if we were going to do like a NBA style usage rate, he might be number 1 in usage rate in the NFL. So not only did they not address backup quarterbacks as highly as I think they should have, they also put a lot of burden on their quarterback to be really successful. So I think that's really hard to replicate. And then my third point on this is they have the toughest division in football. I think you're looking at this next season. The Miami Dolphins finished 2nd. They finished 9-8. They did have a negative point differential, but Tua dealt with some injuries last season that played a part in that, which Tua could get hurt again. Don't get me wrong, but you essentially take Miami's biggest needs and biggest holes last season, which was their running game, their pass defense, and their consistency overall on defense. They've addressed all of that. They got a new defensive coordinator. They've addressed their running game, and they addressed their secondary in big ways. That team should be really good. The Jets won 7 games with Zach Wilson at quarterback, and now have Aaron freaking Rodgers. That's a really good. I question Super Bowl winner potentially, but that should be a pretty solid football team nonetheless. I think it's going to be pretty okay at minimum and could be good. And then you look at the Patriots where, like, look, the Patriots had problems last year, but the Patriots still won 8 games. They went 8-9 last year. It's not like this team was a bunch of slouches, even with all their issues that we talked about a lot this offseason. And seemingly they fixed a lot of those issues this offseason. We'll see if the DeAndre Hopkins deal closes. That would be huge for changing the trajectory of this team. But at the minimum, like, They got more, yards after the catch stuff on offense with the guys they brought in. They brought in a more sophisticated play caller. They have a lot going for them. They should be even faster on defense, which is a scary thought because this defense was really good last year. So I think this is the tough, even if the Patriots are the fourth team in this division, which is a real possibility, I think that's a really tough out week after week. So I think this is a really tough division for Buffalo to win. And yeah, I think they're the best team in it still, but there are a lot of slippery slopes here, I feel like, for Buffalo compared to some of these other contenders.
Yeah, I get it. I think, situation is why I didn't have him, better than the 49ers, but I still feel like, all that, and you're absolutely right that if Josh Allen gets hurt, they're screwed. And that's a knock on them for sure. But I think that they're still going to have a good defense next year. I still trust this defense. I actually think it could be better now that, I don't think they're just going to throw Tre'Davious White as a number one corner and just let him do that. And if he continues to struggle, I think they'll eventually figure something else out. I also don't think he'll struggle. I think he'll, with a full training camp, hopefully play better. They also, I think, Kair Elam's going to have another year under his belt, which should help. I think that there's more guys they've added in the secondary. It's not a lot of names, but just have a ton of guys. So if some of them could come through and just play solid football for them. And, you factor in again with the Josh Allen thing of how much value he brings to this team. You brought up point differential. They were second best in the league, only 4 points behind the 49ers in point differentials last year. So while a lot of their issues, they are true, they had those issues last year. It still didn't really stop them from, dominating the league.
Yeah, I think that's completely fair. But I just, they have the fourth most difficult schedule in the league next season. They're ahead of only the Dolphins, Raiders, and Patriots. So, maybe, if it's a couple losses here and there, Allen gets a little dinged up, isn't as effective in mobility or something like that. I could see it kind of crumbling a little bit. That being said, I'm being a little pedantic here, but at the same time, I'm still picking Buffalo to win this division probably right now.
Of course.
If you had a gun to my head. But at the same time, if we're saying the team's most likely to make the playoffs, I just see more scenarios where Buffalo misses the playoffs than a few other teams on my list.
Yeah, I get the argument. I think it's a fair argument. It's definitely, again, we both think most of these teams are going to make the playoffs anyway, but that's just kind of what makes it an interesting exercise. Number 10, where are you going?
There's a couple NFC teams I really like here that I think probably make the playoffs, but I'm just going to stick in the AFC because I think this is the better team. I think they're a better team than Buffalo Bills too. Cincinnati Bengals. This team has they backed themselves up. The Super Bowl loss can be a difficult thing for a lot of teams to overcome. We don't always see it. And yes, there are some young guys in the secondary that I think have some questions going into the season. But barring something catastrophic, I don't see this offense slowing down. They have Joe Burrow, Joe Mixon's coming back, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd. I like Hayden Hurst, but at the same time, Irv Smith should be fine at that tight end spot when he's the fifth option. So there are a lot of pieces here. And even if there are some struggles on the defense this year without some of those guys in the secondary, I still think the guys they have at skill position are going to put up a lot of points and be successful. And they got Orlando Brown Jr., which I think is a huge add.
Yeah, I do think that helps a lot. I feel like, I don't know. I think this offensive line consistently has 4 guys I feel good about. I don't know why they don't just get a fifth guy and then they're good. But that's, I still kind of feel similar here in that scenario. But and also I think the Cam Taylor Britt, that he means so much to this team, right? There's there's so much pressure on Cam Taylor Britt to come in and perform well as going to be the number 2 corner. I would be really concerned if they have a secondary injury, I think, because you got Mike Hilton in the slot with Awuzie and Taylor Britt as the 2 corners. I think that you're right. There's defensive issues, but I also do kind of agree in the sense of, this offense is going to be great. Of course, we know that.
Yeah. You're not a fan of Sidney Jones stepping in here?
It's fine. I don't think it's he's a depth player. That's where he should be.
Yeah. Dax Hill and Cam Taylor Britt will decide this season, which is crazy to say because usually we're talking quarterbacks deciding seasons, receivers, that sort of thing. And it really feels like I think regardless, I think this is going to be a good team. But what makes this a Super Bowl team is if those guys are good, which there is a possibility because Cam Taylor-Britt made some pretty impressive plays on the stretch. He was inconsistent. He was a rookie. I give him the benefit of the doubt there. But he had some moments that were pretty impressive too.
Yeah, I don't know what happened. Your screen got like very bright. You just got like very white for a second.
Yeah, that was bizarre. I don't know what happened either. My dog's barking too. I don't know. Something's happening.
Oh my God. Are you getting abducted by aliens? Are aliens outside? Is that what's happening?
That'd be sweet to have on live stream, wouldn't it?
Yeah, that would
just
be great.
Like my abduction.
I mean, if aliens were to abduct, I feel like there's a chance. How do we get here? If aliens were to abduct, I feel like it's a good chance someone would be podcasting during it, right? I doubt they would just abduct one person.
Yeah, I would assume so. I don't know. It'd be pretty cool to be abducted by aliens.
Yeah,
as long as they don't as long as they don't kill me or something. But I don't know. I'll go hang for a little.
I always felt like similar about like going to prison. Of like, I don't want to go to prison, but I kind of want to have been to prison, if that makes sense. I want the stories.
I'd rather get abducted by aliens than go to prison.
Well, I think sure, but like I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think I'm going to go to prison either, but at least I could, I don't know, maybe I could get falsely convicted or something.
I don't know. I think I'm more likely to see an alien than go to prison. What am I going to go to prison for?
I don't know. Sometimes they get the wrong guy. What if you happen to be the wrong place at the wrong time, Kyle?
I don't go anywhere. That's the whole point of podcasting. You don't leave your house.
Kyle, at my brother's wedding, you got everyone to wear their ties on their heads. You seem like a kind of guy who could have a night go wrong and end up in prison for, I don't know, something. At least jail.
I knew I wasn't driving that night, so I'm mostly responsible. There was a few too many whiskey diets that night. That's all.
I'm just saying, I don't think you would ever do a serious crime that would result in time. I'm just saying I could see something going wrong. Wrong place, wrong time. You're at a bar. I don't know. Maybe there's a stabbing and they think you did it.
I guess. Yeah, that's possible. Well, I guess if it happens, I'll let you know. I'll give the updates on the podcast.
All right. I think we just covered the Bengals pretty good there. Let's move on. Let's go to Kyle. I'm surprised that I'm the one who's picking this team. I thought for sure you'd be the one picking this team. The Dallas Cowboys, who, I mean, you couldn't have really justified picking them above the other ones, I don't think. But you're Dallas Cowboys. To me, this just feels like a team where it's honestly, you could argue the Cowboys should even be, better than the Bengals and Bills, just because of, like you said, the Bengals, if they have to do a full season of Trevor Siemian, they're in trouble. The Bills, if they have to do a full season of Kyle Allen, they're in trouble. If the Cowboys have a quarterback injury, I think that they're a team that to me, and again, they still have Cooper Rush on the roster, feels like they could handle, again, I don't know if a full season, but they can handle, another 5-game stretch of Cooper Rush, I think, more so than other teams could.
Yeah, I mean, it worked. It was fine. I think quarterback wins are the dumbest thing, attributing wins to a quarterback is kind of unfair. But at the same time, he wasn't a stiff either. He obviously showed he could step in there and do a little bit. It just kind of depends on, like I said, if it's a 17-game sample of Cooper Rush having to play, I'm not as optimistic about it. But he was able to weather the storm for a few games too. So that was able to work. Yeah, I mean, do you see this team being worse than a 6 seed?
It's hard to. It's very hard to imagine. I'm not saying. I think you could definitely argue. My issue with the Cowboys, I feel like since we've been doing this podcast, we pretty much both kind of. I pretty much always kind of felt like with the Cowboys, there's a pretty high floor to this team, and maybe I've been too low on the floor sometimes with the Cowboys. But I feel like I've always been pretty right on that. There is a ceiling to this team. I don't see this team ever. I mean, maybe this year if the Eagles aren't as good, in a weak NFC, but I don't really ever see this team getting to a Super Bowl with the way it's currently constructed. But I also have a hard time seeing this team ever bottom out.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, I don't know. I just feel like I keep looking at this NFC picture and I like 4 teams from 2 divisions, and then I kind of like the Lions, right? And then everyone else I just feel like is going to kind of slot into their place after that. So, I don't really see them falling any worse than the 6th seed unless someone really blows me away this season, which I guess is possible. But, I just don't know who that team's going to be.
Yeah, who knows? I mean, what if maybe Jordan Love comes out and is amazing or something? You never
Justin
know,
Fields
right?
makes a leap, something like that.
Yeah, and one of those things is going to happen, right? Like not one of those two things, but like something weird is going to happen. Something no one predicted the Geno Smith resurgence, right? But
Yeah.
like any one specific team having that kind of resurgence is very unlikely. But when there's 10 of those teams, it's likely one of those teams will have that.
Yeah. So it'll be fun to watch, but yeah, I mean, I think this team is pretty good. Like you said, they're probably not winning a Super Bowl anytime soon. They're probably not making a Super Bowl. I think they're clearly a tier below San Francisco and Philadelphia, but I still feel like right now when I'm looking at it, they're in a tier with a couple teams, and I think they're a tier above everybody else, and everyone else is kind of picking for those last two spots.
How does this team miss the playoffs with a healthy Dak Prescott? What's the pathway? Is it I think Tyron Smith gets hurt. That's first off, which that's not this injury. That's something that's just has a very real chance of happening. And then it's like Brandon Cooks and Stephon Gilmore aren't great as their new additions, and maybe they struggle in the secondary because of that. And also CeeDee
Play
Lamb's kind
calling's a
of
disaster with Mike McCarthy.
yeah
Offense takes a dip.
that could be
Van Der Esch gets an injury, which is a possibility too.
mm-hmm.
I think some of those things could kind of play a part in it. Yeah. But I don't know. I think it would have to be like multiple of those factors for this team to get below 9 wins in my book.
Yeah, seems unlikely, and I guess the other way would be I don't know if a few NFC teams are better than we realize, and it takes 10 wins to get in. I don't know, but seems like they're going to make it. Number 8, where are you going?
Let's stick in the NFC. Those were the teams I had above the Bills, by the way. The Bills were my next team here.
Gotcha.
But Bills were taken. Like I said, stick in the NFC. The other team I kind of have in this tier, let's go Seattle Seahawks.
Okay.
I think this is a good team. I think that they did a really nice job this offseason, kind of putting the fine tuning around the edges here. I think these tackles, too, these two young tackles, they started 2 rookie tackles last year. I think those guys are going to get better. I think the running back room, they've invested a lot in running back, which I think is a mistake. But I think both of those guys are good, too. So, they're going to be able to run the ball. They're going to be able to throw the ball with these 3 receivers and Noah Fant now. Will Dissly's not a bad backup tight end either. They got a really nice offensive core just in general, top to bottom. I have some concerns about the defense. I think Bobby Wagner bringing him back's a really nice pickup. That was a pretty shrewd move. But how does Jamal Adams fit into all of this? We'll see. Can these 2 young corners continue to, can Tariq Woolen continue to play well? Can Devin Witherspoon step in and be awesome right away? Can this run defense get better? Those are going to be the big questions, but overall, this team's going to put up a lot of points in my mind. So I think they're going to be good.
Yeah, I mean, Seattle. I mean, it's interesting. We talk about Dallas as the kind of high floor, low ceiling team. Feels like Seattle has a similarly high floor. I think maybe slightly below it, but a much higher ceiling because of all of these young players. I mean, every single thing. I have some concerns about the secondary. Well, what if Devin Witherspoon is awesome right away, and they have Tariq Woolen and Devin Witherspoon who are great corners, and that can kind of recreate the Legion of Boom a little bit. There's that option. We have some concerns about I guess the one thing is how much is that defensive line really going to be able to take a step forward? I don't know. That's maybe the one area I'm still not necessarily banking on. They did add Draymond Jones, gave him a bunch of money. I don't know if that what that's going to do, but he has had some good years in Denver. I don't know if I would have given him that money, but there's if he can be what they want him to be, maybe that's how that could work. So there still is at least an answer. Maybe you could argue some offensive line issues, but what if Charles Cross and Abraham Lucas both continue to play better in year 2, and now you have 2 great tackles? There's so much potential on this team. Obviously, I think a big way that this could fall apart and they can miss the playoffs. It's just if those things don't happen and all those young players don't take the next step the way we think they might.
Yeah. I agree with everything you just said. They were 19th in defensive EPA. I don't love their pass rush options, although I think, Taylor and Nwosu are okay, but if they are a little more inconsistent this next year and not getting to the quarterback, I think that's just going to be even harder on their young secondary too. So yeah, I mean, I have some concerns in the defense. I have some questions, but I also don't think all of their questions are going to be bad answers, right? I think some of it's going to work out fine and they're going to plug it together and figure it out. And, for as much as we criticize Pete Carroll, I just don't think he's going to tolerate having an atrocious defense, right? I think it's at
Well,
least
he's
going to
been
be.
tolerating it for a bit.
That's fair. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's been a mess. Like, it's been bad, but I don't think it's been like. I don't see a situation where the worst defense in the league or anything like that. Maybe. No, I don't
Wasn't there
see it.
that 1 week where they like 1 year where they started off like historically bad, like halfway through the year, and then they
Yeah,
finally got better towards the end?
Cam Newton went off on them.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I could. It wouldn't be the craziest thing in the world. I don't think.
Yeah. But they also, like you said, they fixed it by the end of the season. So I don't know. I think they'll at least figure some things out there. And then I just think this offense should be nasty if they let the ball fly a little bit. So I like the Seahawks team. I like the what they're doing with this roster. And Gino's on a pretty good contract too. So I think that helps.
Well, and that would be the other way to if Gino takes a step back, which I don't think will happen, but there is that would be the other way. It feels kind of like a reach given the fact that we still have like the Jaguars, Chargers, Ravens, Dolphins on the board, but also I do understand it because like it's the NFC versus the AFC thing.
Yeah. I mean, it really is. I mean, I guess the one you can make the case for here is the Jaguars because it's like someone in the AFC South has to catch them. But that's the one
Mm-hmm.
thing where it's like, outside of that, like I see situations where some of those teams in the AFC fall off because there are good teams chomping at the bits here.
Uh-huh. Yeah. I agree. Let's move on. Why don't we? I'm not going to go to Jaguars. I'm going to go to Miami Dolphins here. I like this
Okay.
Dolphins team. I think the Dolphins are going to be good. Again, the concern is the Tua injury factor. I think Mike White's an okay backup. It's an interesting decision, but there's some hope that I think Mike White could come in and keep the team afloat. Really, the concern of this team, I think if Tua is healthy, I think they're a lock for the playoffs. I think they're much better than where they're at right now. I think the biggest concern is just simply Tua's health.
A lock for the playoffs. Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
All
probably.
right. Well, good segment. Next up
No,
on the list.
I'm just thinking it through because this is another team where it's the same thing. This AFC East is brutal. I think it's going to be tough for a
Mhm.
lot of these teams to find wins there. Um, and yeah, I mean, I just think like it should be better, but we also thought this defense was going to be good last year. And I know they had some injuries, but at the same time, like they still had talented players out there week after week, and it didn't work. So like we obviously think Vic Fangio is going to come in and fix this thing, but like what if it doesn't? What if it's not as fixed as we thought or something like that? So, what if their offense is just, moving a little too quickly for the defense to have as much success? I mean, I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see what this Dolphins team looks like. I do think they are going to make the playoffs. I do think they got a lot better. Like you said, the Tua injury thing is the question, but I think they even upgraded backup quarterback, so I should give them the benefit of the doubt on that. So, yeah, I think this is going to be a good team. I agree.
Yeah, it's well, and I'm also wondering as we're going through this with the AFC versus NFC stuff, is it possible we're overvaluing that a little bit? Like, what are the like if as much as we feel like the AFC should be better than the NFC, still feels like probably what's going to get you into the playoffs in the AFC. I would still assume it's going to be just a 1-win difference. At most, it's going to be like a 2-win difference, and that would be pretty crazy if it was a 2-win difference between what will get you in the AFC versus NFC, which this might be the year that happens. But again, like we said earlier, one of these teams, like the Giants, still won 9.5 games last year. No one saw that coming. So it's like it's still going to happen where teams are going to have these decent years. It's still probably going to take you 10 games in either conference to get in.
Yeah. Let me be clear. Like, I do think the AFC is significantly better, but
Mm-hmm.
I really only feel confident about those four teams in the NFC. Like, I may not pick an NFC team for a while here. And I think it really
Uh-huh.
just affects those four teams that I feel pretty good about heading into next season. So yeah, I mean, I think it helps the teams at the top of the NFC, but when it comes to picking these teams here in the second here at the bottom of the NFC, I do not feel as confident in picking these guys. And I think that's where we're going to start to see the gap of, what, this team's just more talented and I'm taking this team.
All right. Well, then number 6, where are you going?
Um, yeah, I'll take the Jaguars here. Like I said,
Mm-hmm.
I, Tennessee's a pain in the ass. They really just are. Like they're just
Mm-hmm.
around. They're the zombies of the NFL. They won't die. And yeah, they could take this division again. They were a Josh Dobbs, colossal mistake away from winning this division last year. So yeah, I definitely think they could win it. But at the same time, if the Jaguars are basically just competing with one team, that's a leg up on a lot of other teams who are really battling for positions in the AFC because there aren't a lot of positions to give here. So yeah, I got the Jaguars.
Yeah, it's a fair thing. When you brought that up, I almost changed my pick to put the Jaguars at 7. I still decided to go with my list, but I definitely considered it because, like, you're right. You can't count out the Titans. You just can't do it. You can't say the Titans are dead because they're a weird team that finds ways to overperform. So you can't fully celebrate it yet. We think that the Calvin Ridley thing should sort of unlock this offense. And again, another team where if we're just ranking the ceilings of these teams, when we do our just straight up predictions, we might be a lot higher on the Jaguars than we are now because there's definitely a high ceiling. I guess the question that I would have is still the Lawrence question of we're kind of all expecting Lawrence to take that next step and to get, better. We don't know if that's going to happen. And like this offensive line is a real issue. I think there's a lot of concerns I have. Now, again, a lot of guys who could get better. So it's kind of like, they weren't great last year, but maybe could be good this year. I don't know. There's some concerns I have with this team. And, it is worth mentioning this team went 9-8 last year. And at one point they were 4-8. So I know that they finished the season strong and that's why we're all high on them, but it's not like they were lighting the world on fire last year.
Yeah, there is still a chance, like I said, I think I said it 2 weeks ago, where everything that we saw go wrong at the beginning of the year just continued, and then we're all of a sudden low on this team again. That being said, like even, I don't know, like they obviously got better at pass catcher with Calvin Ridley, and I think that's just going to go a long way. You look at that, that's a really nice pass catching core. I think there are some guys I still kind of like. I like Anton Harrison, who they drafted. I like Walker Little, who they got 2 years ago. Like, there are some guys here who I think can be good. Obviously, they have to prove they're better than what they were last year. And then, like, my only major, like, I think Lawrence is going to be good. Maybe I'm being a little too, head in my sand about that, but I just think it's going to happen. I think the only real concern for this team for me is, do they get after the quarterback at all? Is it just going to be too easy to sit back there and take all day to throw? But like, you look at some of the young guys on this team, like, you would assume Devin Lloyd's going to be better. You would assume guys like Tyson Campbell get better. You would assume guys like Andre Sisco get better. There's a lot of really nice young talent on this defense before you even get into the Trayvon Walker question. So like, I think this defense could even, end up getting a little bit better next season because some of these younger guys are going to get better and be more impact guys too. So I do think it has a chance to go either way, but they do need to find a way to get a pass rush for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely one of those things where it's like it could get better, but it also could get worse with this defense. It is up in the air. So again, I think they're going to make the playoffs. But just if we're talking about how it could go wrong, it's Lawrence doesn't take the next step. We think they do. And then Trayvon Walker doesn't take the next step. We think he can do. Maybe the secondary regresses because it's defense and that happens. And then they might be in trouble if the Titans are still a 9-1 team.
Yeah. Like, to be fair, to be clear, I do think Miami is a better team, better roster and all that.
Okay.
Like, unless Trevor Lawrence makes like an MVP level leap.
Right.
Which I guess is on the table too, right? Like, it is possible.
For sure.
He's that level of prospect. But I just think if we went through this right now, would you take the teams that Jacksonville is competing with versus the teams Miami's competing with? Would you take Tennessee or the Jets?
I mean, obviously, I would take every single team that's in the AFC East over the Titans, who are the Jaguars' biggest competition.
Right. Would you take every team in the AFC North over the Tennessee Titans?
Let's see. Yeah. So that's probably, yeah, I would.
Yeah. Would you take the Chargers and the Broncos over the Titans?
I think you could talk me into Titans over Broncos. I think you could talk me into that.
I think I'm with you there. So at the very minimum, though, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 teams that the Miami Dolphins are competing for 3 wildcard spots, where the Jaguars are competing with 1 team for 1 playoff spot. So, I mean, the math says take the Jaguars and that, that they have the easier path. That's just what it is.
Yeah, you make your case very well. Let's move on to number 5. And it's weird because I really do feel like there's still 2 teams on this list. And I'm like, they feel like they're still playoff teams. I think for number 5, I'm gonna go for a team that just paid their quarterback. Give me the Ravens here because I like what the Ravens did this offseason. I like that they paid Lamar. I think that was the correct move, and I like what they did with the offense. I'm very excited to hopefully finally see Lamar with an actual receiving core. We haven't seen it yet. We've seen him win an MVP with a not very good receiving core, which the only other guy I can think of that's done that in the modern era was Cam Newton. I'm very excited to see how much of this offense can really be unlocked with that. Now, there's some concerns defensively. Again, Rocky Sin, I think, is a good player. I don't hate him as a number 2 corner, but I still do worry a little bit about the depth in the secondary. But again, it's the Ravens. You kind of assumed they're going to still be good. I have some concerns about the defense. I think also you could argue with Lamar's play style, could he get hurt? Although I still trust Huntley to, if they need him to play for 4 games, I trust him to win 2 of them, right? That's kind of how I just feel about the Ravens. Very excited for what they can do. I could see some concerns, but I think they should again, kind of one of those things where I could see them winning 10 games and missing the playoffs might be the way that that ends up happening.
I think I mostly agree with that. I mean, like, look, the offense is one of the most fascinating things I think to watch this season, without a doubt. Like they put real weapons around him, and I mean, Jackson, like you said, he's won an MVP, and probably has gone a little too under the radar for what his talent level is the last couple of years. And yeah, I mean, there's a real chance that he's just special next year with these guys. But there's also a chance like Bateman and Beckham don't stay healthy again, and stuff like that happens. But at the same time, I'm excited to see it. I think it's going to be awesome. Not to mention, like, I think Isaiah Likely is going to be a more interesting option too as the second tight end in this offense. So I think they got a lot of weapons to work with. This will be fun. The defense, I agree. Like, I'm not really worried about the secondary. It seems like as you are. Like, I think there's pretty good depth here, honestly. Like, I don't like Trayvon Mullen when he's starting at corner, Raiders fans, but I kind of like him as a third string guy. You're looking at this. We probably have to see a little more out of their pass rushers, right? Like, Owe has potential and he's someone that we like, but it hasn't really translated in production. So I think Ajabo's a really interesting prospect now that they get healthy. They drafted him knowing that he basically wasn't going to play. So, I think it's going to be interesting to see those guys get some action and what they can do. But I mean, that's basically my biggest question. The Ravens should be awesome, no doubt.
Yeah. Also, what did we didn't talk about? I feel much. Patrick Queen was actually like a player last year. Like he actually finally like looked like all right. Like I mean, like he wasn't a star or anything, but he actually looked like he belonged there.
He's playing with Roquan Smith, maybe. I don't know.
I guess so. Yeah, that might be so. Yeah, because Roquan Smith's, I mean, been a perfect fit for that team. So, you have Kyle Hamilton, PFF's highest rated safety in his rookie year. Great stuff for the Ravens. Could be scary, but still they're 5th just because of the way this is set up. Kyle, number 4 on the list. I think I know where this is going, but why don't you give it?
Let's go with the Los Angeles Chargers. I think this is probably the AFC team that most people would probably boot out right now. I like some of the things they did this offseason. Like I like adding the third pass catcher. I think but I mean, I don't know. It feels like there's a chance that this is like kind of a putting a Band-Aid over the problem situation, right? Like they didn't fire the coach, even though the coach I think warranted it's in some regard some firing. And now all of a sudden, like, you try and stopgap it with a new play caller. Maybe this all works. Justin Herbert is legitimately great. You have all these weapons. You have all this. It should be fine. But at the same time, there's a real chance this defense stinks again. And Keenan Allen gets hurt again. And Herbert is trying to drag them through games just like last season.
Yeah, definitely. Again, I think that, if a gun to my head, if you say, are the Chargers going to make the playoffs? I think I would still say yes. I think I would still put them on as, more likely to make the playoffs than miss the playoffs. But there's definitely concerns. And I also feel like, well, I'm a big fan of, Quentin Johnston, the wide receiver. I still don't know if I love that fit necessarily right away. I still think it's a good move because, again, how longer is Keenan Allen going to play? All that stuff. I still like the selection. But, who's going to be the slot guy, I guess. They still don't have a great slot guy. That's been kind of my concern about them for years now, and they still don't have a guy who I love to be able to do that. Maybe you have Keenan Allen do it. I don't know. But, I still think this team's good. There's not really a lot of holes in this team too much. Like, they're kind of just like, offensively, I think the offense should be good. Again, the question is, can they unlock it? Because it feels like the offense is never quite as good as we think it should be. And then again, like, what are we going to see from J.C. Jackson? That kind of thing is maybe how this could go wrong.
Yeah, I agree with all that. I have a lot of questions about their defense, so I think it's going to be a tough thing to address. And you know what? Maybe there's also the other side where it works out, where J.C. Jackson returns to form a little bit. You're looking at guys like maybe Kenneth Murray gets a little bit better. Eric Kendricks, brings some life to this linebacker core too. Like, maybe that stuff works out, but at the same time, it's hard to bet on at this point, right?
Yeah, I think so. It's again, I don't know. It feels like the Chargers are just destined for another, like, being like in the playoff hunt, like bubble team, right?
Yeah, I think so. Like, I think it could be really interesting, like, if this offense stays healthy, because Herbert is just that good. Like, Herbert could legitimately put together an MVP season, but they win 11 games. I don't know. Where are you at with this Brandon Staley defense? Like, I thought it was pretty, like, fascinating at a time and, like, worked, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
But doesn't it feel like that people have just kind of figured this out now? Like, oh, we'll take 6 yards out the entire game, if that's what you want to give us. I don't know.
I mean, I would say that every team's doing this now, and offense is way lower now than it ever has been. Or not that it ever has been, but has been since the past few years. Offense is taking a dip, which usually doesn't happen. Like, I don't think that's totally coincidental. I still think it's the best. The preferred defense is the one your opponent isn't good at, playing against, right? Like when teams were playing the Packers last year, it's okay, no, you do the cover one man stuff because they couldn't beat that, right? That's the idea. That I really think the preferred defense is the Bill Belichick thing of, like, let's just get guys who can do everything, and then we'll game plan our, against what our opponent's weaknesses are. But I do think that ideally, if all else is equal, I'd still rather do the Brandon Staley thing than the Matt Patricia thing.
I think I'd do anything over the Matt Patricia thing, that's for sure.
So. But I just Brandon Staley over, a cover one scheme.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Mm-hmm. All right, 3 teams left, and really, this is what we did the podcast for. Is for the first 11 were just filler for the for these. These are the 3, and Kyle, I went back and forth on this between 2 of these teams. I think it's just I'm such a homer for this team. I'm always just saying such nice things for this team. I think I'm going to do it again. Give me the Giants here at number 3. Picking the Giants as the only the 3rd most likely team to miss the playoffs that made it last year.
I agree with you. I had this team in the same spot. Like, look, this was the 9th best offense last season. Like, for all the flack we give the Daniel Jones contract, which I think is somewhat fair. Like, they did an okay job moving the ball without any pass catchers, right? Now they have some pass catchers. So, like, I think if we go beyond the Jones contract, I think they did a pretty good job of helping this offense out this offseason. You hope Evan Neal gets better. This could be a pretty good offensive line if he ends up working out. Maybe it takes a year for him too. Wan'Dale Robinson gets better too. Like, there's just guys I could see getting better. You look at Saquon, they did the right thing by franchise tagging him, I think. Darren Waller comes in. Like, I think this offense could be okay. And that's before even getting to the defense, which I think is pretty good. Like, you look at this defensive line. This defensive line's really good. Kayvon Thibodeau has shown flashes. There's a lot to like here too on this side of the ball. I can see this Giants team making the playoffs once again, no doubt.
Yeah, and it's like you think about the Evan Neal thing too, of like, could he, he was a mess last year, but could he get better? I do think the Giants could get better this year. In fact, I think I might even bet on it. I think we even said, in terms of like just actually be a better football team. Now, would I win more games? That might not happen, because I didn't think they were a 9.5 win caliber team last year, even though that's how many they won. But like, to add a Darren Waller on top of it, which I think is going to help. I think we said during like our offseason stuff, like, the Giants pretty much had a great offseason, with the exception of paying Daniel Jones $40 million a year. Like, other than that one move, which is like a pretty big move to make, they did a lot of great stuff outside of that.
Yeah. I think I agree with that. And I mean, I just think like, you're going to get better production out of Kayvon Thibodeau and Aziz Ojolari. And I think that's going to help solve some of your biggest issues, which was on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, they were what? 20th in dropback EPA, and they were 30th in rush EPA, which, I just think that stuff's going to get better with some of the guys they have in personnel and some of the younger guys getting better. So, yeah, I see the defense improving. Even if the offense takes a little dip because, there's some regression from Jones, Barkley's a year older, that sort of thing. Even if it falls to like a top 16 offense instead of a top 10 offense, I think the defense is going to get good enough to where they kind of stay afloat.
Okay, Kyle, gun to your head. Do the Giants make the playoffs next year or not?
Let's see. So I got, all right, I'll seed it out here. I got right now I would have the Eagles 1, the Niners 2. I'd have the Lions 3. Pick your NFC South poison 4. I have Cowboys 5 and 6 with Seahawks. Gun to my head, I'll say no. But okay. I see a path to them making it. Because I don't think there's much separation in that. After I take out Cowboys Seahawks, I don't think there's much separation in the tier for the Giants, potentially the Commies if things work out with Brissett or Howell. With the Packers if like Jordan Love's not a stiff. And maybe one of these younger teams get better. Maybe Chicago gets better. Maybe the Falcons get better or something like that. I don't think there's much separation that's here. So I'll say no because the math says say no on that if I think all those teams are close. But I see a pathway to them being that 17 again.
I think I agree. Let's move on. 2 teams left. It's the Buccaneers and the Vikings. Who will you say is the second most likely to miss the playoffs, which will also, in turn, create the most likely to miss the playoffs on this podcast?
Vikings. Like, I don't know what animal they sacrificed to pull every game out of their ass last season, but they're in for a rude awakening, I think, this season. This team was not very good. We've talked about this a lot in the offseason. They had some struggles last year that I think they somehow overcame. Like, I think the amazing thing to me, like, this wasn't even that awesome of an offense. Which, I mean, they were top 10 passing, which is obviously something that goes a long way, but they couldn't run the ball. They weren't really good on a per play basis. And then, like, their defense was also just atrocious. Like, it wasn't a good defense last season. It's an aging defense. And, they were 21st in dropback EPA, and they got some pretty spectacular performances out of Patrick Peterson and some of these guys. So, yeah, I got the Vikings missing the playoffs.
Yeah, I'm concerned about this defense. I am. I think that there's I see a Vikings fan in the chat is unhappy with this placement. Ice cold take. Listen, we're doing what we can here. All right. But yeah, I have concerns about the defense. Again, like Byron Murphy Jr. should help, but I definitely still feel like those young secondary players are really going to have to come in. Guys who we've seen basically nothing from, and come in and play well right away, which is concerning. That's going to happen. Obviously we all love Justin Jefferson. He might be the guy who, if you're starting a franchise today, can pick any player that's not a quarterback. He might be that guy you pick. He's obviously incredible, but I think that there's some concerns outside of that. What are their other options? Maybe Jordan Addison comes in and plays well. And really, that's the concern with the Vikings in general. They're expecting a lot out of these young players, which I think is going to be, I don't know how well it's going to work out. It's also just crazy. This team won 13 games last year with a negative point differential.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah, it just is. I don't know. I'm willing to bet they miss out. We'll see, Cave Dog. We'll see. It's just, we talk so much too about, you need 3 guys. You need 3 offensive options. Not sure I love the options beyond Jefferson and Hawkinson, unless Addison is awesome, which I guess is a possibility, but I don't know, man. I think, the offense could take a dip, and the defense is probably going to take a dip. I've slandered this defense a lot this offseason, so I think I've made my point on that. But we'll see what happens with them. We will. But I don't see the path right now, barring more end of game luck in scenarios like that.
Yeah. Also, worth mentioning, if we just went by point differential last year, they still would have been the seventh best team in the NFC. Just given how that was at, even despite with a negative record. So it's not the end of the world. Maybe if they repeat last year, they still could. Point differential wise, they still could end up in the playoffs that way.
Yeah, I mean they could, but I don't know. Could also see some of these teams get better and make it a conversation. So I don't know.
Yeah. Number one on the list, then. Why don't we just go there to round it out? My Tampa Bay Buccaneers. How dare you put them at number one, Kyle?
You're starting Baker Mayfield at quarterback. You did it to yourself.
The funny thing is, like, I actually think roster-wise and situation-wise, this team should probably be better than one. Like, if you just look at the Baker, yes, Baker Mayfield, but Baker Mayfield's okay, fine. You're not going to have great quarterback play, but maybe you can get something there. There still are plenty of weapons. The offensive line should be better this year, although I still don't think it will be great. But good defense. You run the ball. Todd Bowles will coach it up well. I just think that, like, I keep going back to this team was a bottom 10 offense last year with Tom Brady at quarterback. Like that offense isn't going to get better this year. It's going to be a mess. And I think that you can't win in the NFL with that kind of offense, even in a weak NFC South. One of those other three teams is going to take the next step and win at least like 9 games. I just think that's going to happen. So, like, is this Tampa Bay team getting up to 9 games? No, it's not. It deserves to be at number one.
Yeah, I mean, they were the worst running team in football last year by statistics, right?
By a mile.
Yeah, and they were like kind of a mid-tier passing team. And that's with getting, kind of decent play out of Tom Brady. Like, I don't like, unless Baker Mayfield finds like 3 years ago, Baker Mayfield, I don't see it. And I don't see it from Kyle Trask either. We've been on that.
I mean, and Tom Brady wasn't bad last year. Like, he wasn't MVP Tom Brady, and like that's what they needed him to be last year. But like, he was like I don't know, like the 11th best quarterback in football last year. Like, that wasn't a disaster at quarterback. Now it could be. I don't know. Hopefully we do. I mean, if it doesn't work out great, hopefully we get a good quarterback in the draft.
I mean, I thought he was fine. I thought Brady was fine when they put the fucking ball in his hands. Like,
right. He was great in the final 2 minutes. One of the best final 2 minutes seasons of all time. Tom Brady had.
He was the best quarterback when his coach wasn't in the way. I mean, it's just
legitimately the reason they're even on the list. The only reason they made the playoffs was because in the fourth quarter, down double digits against the Panthers, they finally said, you know what, Leftwich, you're just not calling plays anymore. We're just running no huddle. And then they came back and won.
Yeah. Something we had been saying all season. We said all season, why don't they just run this no huddle offense, which is actually good because it just lets Brady step back and make decisions. Yeah, I don't see it.
Yeah. And listen, it could happen. I'll say this, like there is a new offensive coordinator. Okay. It could happen. Crazier things have happened. I'll say it can happen because you have the new offensive coordinator. Maybe it's just a homer take, but like, could this be a situation where it's a weak NFC South and that gets them in if they can kind of again win another 8 games, have another 8-win division win? I don't think that's out of the question.
Possibly, like, yeah, maybe, but at the same time, like, I think I'm a little higher on the Saints team than you are.
Maybe. I mean, I'm not saying I think that, like, my guess is one of those extra teams will do better, but I'm just saying I don't think it's the scenario where the Buccaneers get in is you have the other three, the other 3 teams don't play that well.
Yeah, I think that's probably it. But I just think the Saints team's going to be better. Like,
maybe. I don't know. I'm not sold on that team.
I don't know. Like, they have some guys.
Sure, they definitely have stars. But again, Tampa Bay has stars. Why is it crazy to think? I mean, the flip side is this defense did play very well last year, right? I don't think it's out of the question to say Baker Mayfield could have if you get a resurgent season from Baker Mayfield, this team could win 8-9 games. I don't think that's like out of the question.
Yeah, but you're betting on Baker Mayfield to have a resurgent season.
No, to be clear, I'm very much not betting on that to happen. I'm just saying this is if this happens, could they make the playoff?
Yeah, I mean, if that happens, they could.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, what are we banking on more here? If we're gonna compare these two teams, and I don't think the Falcons and Panthers are slouches. Like, they're bad teams, but they're not like I don't think any of those teams are the worst team in football. They're just all bad,
Right.
like below average to bad teams, right? So I
Mm-hmm.
don't think any of those teams are the worst team in football. But let's just compare these two for, because that's what we're talking about right now. The Saints had a decent defense too, outside of one disastrous performance against Arizona. Um, what do you think is more likely to happen? A Derek Carr bounce back season or a Baker Mayfield resurgence season? That's 100% Derek Carr.
Of course. Mm-hmm. No, the
Yeah,
Saints are the favorites, and this is also why the Buccaneers deserve to be number one on this list, is because we're talking about how the Buccaneers could get into the playoffs, not the other way around.
right.
That,
Yeah.
that's the proof right there.
Yeah, exactly. You got to argue for it. So, I mean, I don't know. They had a lot of these pieces last year and still stunk. That's the thing. Outside of, they managed to win 8 games.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I mean, I'll say this as well. I didn't think the quarterback play was terrible for the Saints last year. I thought Andy Dalton was actually pretty solid last year. Andy Dalton was not the issue with that team.
He had a couple disastrous games.
Sure, but
I felt like that made the difference. I think if you took it on a macro sample, yeah, he wasn't that bad. But I feel like there was a couple games there where things went haywire. And that's where, that's the difference between them winning 7 games last year and them winning, maybe winning this division, because all they needed was 9 wins.
Maybe. I don't know. I'm not confident. I actually think that, I don't know. I don't know. I don't even know if I'm picking either of these two teams to win the division next year.
I'm taking the Saints right now.
Okay. Honestly. Well, spoiler alert for the upcoming NFC South podcast.
Yeah, I don't know. I think this team has, it's still not a great team. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying they're a Super Bowl sleeper, but I still see a pathway to this team winning 10 games. 10 games.
I guess so. I don't know. I didn't love their defense last year. I'll be honest. I thought their defense was not. It was okay, but I didn't think it was I didn't think it was great. And I also thought that they're, I don't know how much I trust. I guess fair enough. There's some hope for the Saints here. I think that the Saints, you could definitely argue, are the favorites. I just don't think that it's a lock necessarily.
Yeah. Here's a more fair question. Who are you betting on a resurgent season from? Baker Mayfield or Michael Thomas? Because both feel kind of important.
I think I don't think it's, maybe I'm just higher on, I never thought I'd say this to a person, but I think I might be higher on Baker Mayfield than you are. Baker Mayfield is, he's, I guess, 3 years removed now from playing, Baker Mayfield, you can talk yourself into Baker Mayfield stuff. Baker Mayfield was good last year once he was with the Rams. He had some good moments, last season. I'll take Baker Mayfield over Michael Thomas.
Maybe.
When's the last time you've seen Michael Thomas? Just seen him on a football field, on the sideline, whatever. When's the last time you remember watching the football and seeing Michael Thomas?
He was in for the Tampa Bay game, wasn't he?
I don't remember.
Yeah, he had 3 touchdowns last year. He had a 2-touchdown game against Atlanta. That's right. Yeah, I mean, he's back.
Okay,
baby. It's happening.
I guess they both
Perry too. They're all gonna, Saints are gonna win 12 games. No, I'm just kidding.
Okay. Well, now you're just no. I don't know. Saints will be fine. Whatever. It's who at the end of the day, who cares?
Yeah. No one's picking the NFC South team to represent the NFC of the Super Bowl. That's for sure.
Yeah, I can see it with. Yeah, I can see it. Interesting end to the show.
About how I expected it, right?
I got to defend my team a little bit, Kyle. I can't just let him be, the consensus worst team in football.
I don't think they'll be the worst. Just not a playoff team.
Probably not. It's NFC South. This is how it's going to be this year too. It was the Bucs went 8-9, and then the other 3 teams were 7-10. That sums it up.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, I could see all these teams getting 5 or more wins, but I don't see any of these teams getting more than 9 wins either. So we'll see.
Yeah. All right. Well, an interesting show here. I don't know for next week, because we have what? So we have one more week. We're at the Philip podcast, and then we're going to our division previews.
I believe that's what we said. Yes.
Yeah. So I don't know. Do you want to just, unless you had an idea for the show, do you want to just do the flip side of the coin and rank the teams that didn't make the playoffs that are most likely to do it this year?
Sure. Why not?
Okay. And we don't have to do all 18 teams if you don't want to. We could just do top 10.
Yeah. We'll discuss.
Okay, yeah.
Sure. But yeah, that sounds good.
That may be the show. That's at least the working plan. I don't know. Let us know in the comments if you have an idea for a show. We got to fill a show somehow. So I literally all morning I was trying to figure out what we were going to do for this podcast today, Kyle. I was stumped for a while.
Yeah, we could draft teams. We'll talk about it off air.
Okay, yeah, we'll figure it out.
Yeah,
let them know where you can find us on Twitter.
Make sure to follow us on Twitter. That is at Jackson Kruger. Make sure to follow me at by Kyle Grondin. And make sure to follow the account page at On the Sideline JK. That is at On the Sideline JK.
Yeah, you said follow us on Twitter and then said my Twitter handle. I don't want them to think it's like a shared Twitter handle.
No, individual. We are individual people.
Yeah, I don't want to what if I do something cool and then everyone's like, wow, I wonder if this was Jackson or Kyle.
I hope they'd be able to figure it out.
Potentially. Probably they see the misspellings, but okay, yeah, that's Jackson.
Maybe.
Yeah. No, of course, if you like audio only podcasts, like to listen to your podcast instead of watching them on YouTube, anywhere you get your podcast, this is available on the Sideline Podcast. We have a chat. Jackson, a Captain America fan. I'm really not. I don't really watch the Marvel movies or anything. This is my brother's old shirt, and it's kind of the thing where it's I don't know. You're in high school and you have shirts, and then maybe you get out of high school and you buy some more shirts, and then at a certain point you stop feeling like you need to buy shirts, but you also gain some weight, and then you just kind of get stuck with whatever shirts you had at that time that still fit you. That's my story.
Fair enough. I can't question the logic.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a shirt that fits me. That my belly doesn't show when I reach my arms up. It's a good shirt.
I will say, I mean, that's kind of guys wear shirts until there's holes across the chest, basically. Right? Or we have to squeeze into them. Outside of that, you're keeping that shirt probably forever.
Yeah, clothes in general.
Yeah. Same thing with socks.
Yeah, socks, even underwear. I feel I don't know. A year ago, I have all these holes underwear that I'm wearing to have holes. I'm I just go buy a $20 thing of giant thing of underwear. Get new underwear. Why am I doing this to my It's so easy to get holeless underwear.
Yeah, I mean that's probably fair.
Yeah, but get I don't know
the effort of going out.
Right. You have a favorite superhero then? I don't know. I feel in a way, I don't know how you feel. I feel almost the superhero movies have ruined having a favorite superhero in a sense.
No, I mean I still like it, but at the same time, some of the movies have been rough lately. I will say that.
Well, I'm just not into them. That's the thing. I thought comics are okay to me. I just don't like the superhero movies.
I guess that's
not my thing.
I was into it during the first few phases. I'm kind of waning a little bit here. We'll see. Maybe I'll get back into it, but I don't know. Booster Gold's my favorite superhero, by the way. So
okay, I think I'd go Spider-Man. I read some of those comics as a kid.
Yeah, that's fair.
I always liked that the general public hated him. I thought that was cool.
Who hated?
Kind of the general public, everyone hated Spider-Man.
In his comic book or real universe.
No, the universe, he's they think it's a villain.
Oh yeah, I get that. Yeah, that's fair.
I thought that was a neat dynamic.
Yeah.
What's that?
So Batman has some of that too.
Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of like us. General public hates us, but we're doing the right thing.
Are we doing the right thing?
Well, we're having fun.
Giants fans don't think so.
Yeah, Giants fans view us the way the people in New York City view Spider-Man.
Yeah. So, oh man. Let's get out of here.
Yeah, let's get out of here. Thank you to everybody for listening to all this. We appreciate it. Until next time, have a good one.
Peace.